What does it take, Minister, for you to respect the taxpayer dollar?
Welcome back to Another Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. As promised, we are back to the Standing Committee for Government Operations and Estimates, or the mighty OGO as they like to call it. Today, another minister had unwittingly decided to sit in front of the Conservative gauntlet of justice. This time, it's Minister and President of the Treasury Board, Anita Anand, and she did not do well at all.
Let's get into it.
Thank you, Minister. We'll start with Mrs. Cusi for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much, Minister, for being with us here today. Minister, yesterday it was reported in the CBC that 13 federal agencies are now using spyware normally associated with the intelligence world. The article stated that the tools in question can be used to recover and analyze data found on computers, tablets, and mobile phones, including information that has been encrypted and password protected. None of these federal departments fulfilled the required privacy impact assessment necessary to determine what privacy risks exist by using these technologies. So these include texts, emails, search histories. Minister, why is your government so hell-bent on invading the privacy of Canadians?
Holy moly, okay. That was quite the opening salvo on Minister Anand. So, you know, what they're talking about is that, especially in the government, but in private organizations, you're supposed to do this as well. If a government is going to be monitoring your devices that you're given by your IT guys, then what they're supposed to do is A, inform you, and B, make sure that they have all of their ducks in a row in terms of privacy and keeping that information so that it can't be misused in any way. And what Stephanie Cusi is saying is that there's a whole bunch of agencies out there that have deployed this type of software to their staff, and they actually haven't gone through those processes. So they're technically spying or having the ability to spy on employees without their consent. That's not very good.
Yeah, you would need a warrant for something like that.
So this is very interesting. And the thing is you may say, well, why are they not asking Mindone? Why are they not asking Catherine Luello, who's the Chief Information Officer for the time being of the Government of Canada? Well, the thing is all of these directives come down from Treasury Board, which is what Anita Anand is president of. So this is why she's getting this question.
Actually, I would not agree with the premise of the question, although I will say that we need to make sure.
Why would you not agree with it, Minister? This falls under your purview, under Section 3.3 of the Directive on Privacy Impact Assessment. So I'd like to hear from you, please. Why do you not believe that this falls under your purview?
I believe that the role of the president of the Treasury Board is to put in place directives and other policies that guide the public service as well as ministerial roles across the public sector.
Guide the public service, Minister, but also protect them. So what are you going to do now that this report is out there about these 13 agencies, these public servants that are having not only their privacy invaded, everyone that they have communicated with, be it by text, email, their search histories, if they've looked up, say, perhaps an illness that their child is having, anything like this is now potentially within the hands of the government. So what are you going to do now, Minister, that we are aware of this?
If I could just clarify.
I'm finishing my question, Minister, please. So explain to Canadians, please, what are you going to do now as a result of this gross invasion of the privacy of Canadians?
Mr. Chair, can I just ask point of order?
Yes,
Mr. Chair, I'm riveted by the questions that are being asked, but I am looking to hear the president of the Treasury Board respond. So if we can provide
not a point of order, and I would just ask that we do not interrupt people with non-point of orders, please. I understand what you're saying, so it's not a point of order. Everyone will ask that you stop interrupting each other on fake point of orders. Please continue, Ms. Kussi.
Whoa.
Ooh. Attaboy, Kelly.
You know, it's about time. It's about time somebody called the Liberals out on their non-point of orders, and it's just to interrupt the Conservatives from, you know, really holding account these ministers that are their Liberal colleagues.
And Kelly does it so well. Like, he's a very, well, at least he seems like a very friendly and jovial guy. And then when the Liberals are doing something stupid like that, he just...
A switch flip.
Yeah. And just like, enough.
Yeah. And he does it in a way that all of a sudden this presence comes over him that they don't argue with.
Thank you very much. So, Minister, I'll give you, again, an opportunity to tell Canadians, to tell the public service, what are you doing right now to protect their privacy? What are you doing after you saw this report yesterday?
Our government will always take all necessary steps to ensure that public servants are complying with all laws, including privacy laws and the protection of our employees' personal data. Deputy heads of federal institutions are responsible for initiating the directive on privacy, and will make sure that that continues to occur.
What?
Yeah, that was such a garbage answer. We're just sitting here like in shock. Like, what was that?
So a report came out that 13 agencies were essentially violating employees' privacy by not informing them of what they're actually collecting on their devices and what they're monitoring. And your response to that is, we will always make sure that we're doing it, but you're not. That's the point. And that's why Stephanie Kussi is saying, what are you doing to correct that?
I just had a thought. Most, if not all, of these government agencies are union shops, right? What do you think the union's going to say about their employees' privacy being breached in this manner?
Yeah, they're not going to like that, especially, you know, because it's the Public Service Alliance of Canada, one of the largest unions in Canada. They're not going to like that one bit.
Okay. To add insult to injury, with not only this terrible privacy breach, earlier this week, the Chief Information Officer of Canada resigned. This is an industry-tested individual that impressed me every single time that she was committee. She had 2 years to begin to formulate this plan for digital government, which, according to social media this week, Minister, you claim to be committed to, you claim to want to take a leadership role in. And yet your chief information officer resigned this week. So do you take personal responsibility for the lack of direction, the lack of leadership that she required in an effort to provide the entire framework of technology within the public service for Canadians? I mean, this has serious implications for Canadians, for service delivery. What's your response to that, Minister?
So yeah, this is why I said for the time being, because she's still around, but not for long. And this is big. You know, the Chief Information Officer of Canada resigning, and the reason that she resigned is allegedly because she couldn't get anything done. And this is somebody who came in from outside. And they should have brought in somebody from outside, somebody that had experience with organizations, with, you know, making significant changes to organizations, and what organization needs the most change when it comes to technology and process and everything. That's the government of Canada. And after 2 years, she basically threw her hands up and said, I can't deal with this. And this is what I hear from a lot of employees that end up in government, is they initially go in with this pride that they are serving Canada, they're serving the government. There's a pride to say that I work for the federal government. And then they see how it operates and they are just dumbfounded. The government is just falling over itself because of how inefficient it is.
Do you suppose that's like that with a liberal government versus a conservative government? Like maybe a conservative one's better? Like,
it's hard to say. But, you know, when you add 30% more people and the results are that nothing is getting done and things seemed to get done, at least a little better under Harper, I would say that It is worse under a Liberal Prime Minister and a Liberal government.
Or at least the current one.
At least the current one.
Well, I'd first like to thank the Chief Information Officer for her excellent work for the Government of Canada. When she was hired, it was wonderful to have such expertise from the private sector come to inform our work. This is a whole of government approach. We have multiple systems upgrades underway, and I will continue to work with Minister Beach, who is the new responsible Minister for Citizen Services, in terms of our additional upgrades to our digitization and to our systems. But make no mistake, we are very much committed to making government processes more efficient for the Canadian public.
Well, I'm incredibly concerned. This was, as I said, an industry-tested individual. Every time she was before committee, I thought, this is fantastic. I believe in this individual. I believe that this individual, this public servant, has the capacity to come up with a digital plan, a digital solution across government. And we need 500 more IT professionals like her to get things to a place where they need to be, as we saw as well, with the reports of the Auditor General as well, saying that digital government is really suffering and that service delivery for Canadians as a result of our lagging in digital solutions. So please tell Canadians now what your plan is now that your top technology officer, your CIO, has gone, I can't fix this. I can't solve this. What's your plan, Minister?
In about 30 seconds, please.
We agree with the recommendations of the Auditor General, and we are accelerating and expanding the use of Canadian digital service across government. The work is ongoing. I have been in this post just since the end of July, and since that time, I am taking a very aggressive approach to making sure that we undertake systems delivery across this government for the benefit of the citizens of Canada and especially the Canadian taxpayer.
I'm sorry, but the way she talks, she has no idea what she's talking about.
No, but just listening to Cozy and Anand talk, a thought occurs. It sounds like the state of the government's IT world, infrastructure, digital affairs, whatever you want to call it, it sounds bad. And these guys want to introduce digital IDs on top of that. Can you imagine? They're already violating people's privacy, people who work for them.
Yep.
What would they do to the rest of us? How would they violate our privacy with digital ID?
Well, here's the scary thing. Word on the street is that the government is still using systems from 10 or 20 years ago. So when you're talking security of that data and security of that privacy and personal data, everyone should be very, very scared. And this is what the bottler folks were talking about as well. The fact that these processes allow third parties unfettered access to some of these systems, and in some cases, without security clearance. That's scary stuff. And if these are old systems that are not updated anymore, that, like, every Canadian should be really concerned here. And when the CIO says, you know what, I'm out. You people are crazy.
Screw you guys. I'm going home.
Well, that's it, because that's got to be a very cushy job, government pension, government benefits, probably a high salary, and to just be like, okay, I cannot stand it here anymore. I'm done.
Screw you guys.
I think that's very significant.
Well, especially when you have somebody from the private sector coming in. That speaks volumes to everybody. Because in the private sector, there's no messing around. You get results. And if you can't do your job, you're out. That doesn't work that way in government. The fact that she came in and 2 years, typically it's a 5-year plan. And at the end of year 2, she said, no, I'm done. This is silly. Goodbye. That should really concern Canadians.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I join my colleagues in welcoming the Minister and her staff to this meeting. Minister, you reflected on your time as the Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Obviously, that was from 2019 to 2021. And during that time, you oversaw Canada's procurement processes during the COVID-19 pandemic. I would suggest processes that were, some processes that were abandoned or replaced with measures which made it easy for the current Liberal government to actually exploit the pandemic and award contracts to Liberal insiders and their friends. My first question to you, Minister, is during the advent of ArriveCan, do you recall who made the decision to go with the ArriveCan app?
I thank the honourable member for the question. I would like to wish her a very happy birthday from afar. I will clarify, just in reference to your question, that none of the contracts relating to that app came through my office. The CBSA, I understand, is the business owner. PSPC was the contracting authority, but the contracts were executed at the ADM level or below. So I didn't sign off on this matter. I do take the point that we need to continue to improve our processes in this manner. And so I have asked my department, some of the officials of whom are here, to ensure that we are reviewing supply arrangements, to make sure that we're working with PSPC so that they can examine the profit margin on these contracts so that we can provide guidance to auditors in these matters and that we can work with PSPC to modernize training for procurement specialists. Again, I did issue the manager's guide relating to third-party contracting very early in my tenure, recognizing that we can do more work in this area.
That's interesting. And it's interesting because this question, or a question like it, was asked to the PSPC people when they were in committee. And when I say this question, because Anita actually didn't really answer the question other than, this didn't come across my desk. But what she did say is, oh, well, there's processes that need to be improved and we're looking to do that and yada, yada, yada. But Mr. Gillis and his colleagues at PSPC, all they had to say is all processes were followed and there was no misconduct. That's basically what they said. So that's kind of a contradiction from Anita Anand saying, well, we need to fix the process.
There's something else that I noticed, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Cypher, but Anand had said that she didn't have any visibility into these contracts because everything was done at the ADM level or lower. I thought anything over $1 million for government contracts needed to be signed by the minister. Is that not correct?
Over $2 million, yes. But interesting thing about this is that if they're doing everything via task authorization, they don't necessarily need to do that. And if it's at the ADM level, that means Mr. 𝘨𝘀𝘀𝘀, I think that's his name, who was president of the CBSA at that time, he would be signing off on it. But it's strange because she said that everything was handled at the ADM level, which implies that everything was handled within CBSA. Yet she said that PSPC was the contracting authority, which they're supposed to be. Everything's supposed to go through PSPC for this. So there's so many inconsistent answers going on here.
Do we know how much money that PSPC is allowed to sign off on?
Well, they can sign off on anything.
So they could sign off on a $54 million app.
Well, PSPC, the agency, can. At some point, there's, something may cross the minister's desk if the amount is large enough. But the problem here, it's a big problem, is that they kept biting this off in chunks. So the first contract for ArriveCan was $80,000. And then it's hard to say how many other contracts, were kind of around that. Allegedly, there was a contract for $11 million for 2 years. So somebody signed that. Somebody outside of the CBA should have signed that. So Who was it?
Thank you very much, Minister. As I'm sure you are aware, earlier this fall, numerous contracting discrepancies were reported in the Globe and Mail, which has resulted in a criminal investigation. These discrepancies involve 3 companies and the CBSA. And this has resulted in accusations that are very serious and include identity theft, collusion, forged resumes, and fraudulent contracting. So while I hear what you have said about the measures that you are undertaking to ensure proper training for individuals who are involved in the contracting process, my question to you would be whether or not the Treasury Board is conducting a review of what happened with the ArriveCan contractors, and will your department follow the CBSA's example and ban the companies involved from government contracts for at least 180 days due to the revelations uncovered at this committee?
So the role of Treasury Board is very much forward-looking. It is to put in place directives and policies that will support good practices and good governance in the public service. That's why the Manager's Guide on Procuring Professional Services is forward-looking and is hopefully going to be very useful for our procurement specialists. But we are working with PSPC in their matters relating to outsourcing, for example, reviewing the supply arrangement, looking at profit margins, making sure that they are able to modernize training for procurement specialists. I will say this matter has multiple reviews underway, the OAG and other bodies. We will be following this progress of the multiple reviews, but the actual matter of reviewing this particular contract is not under Treasury Board.
Unbelievable. Is anyone curious now as to why the CIO quit? Oh, well, we're forward thinking, meaning we don't want to look back and see what everything, that had to do with possible corruption and possible misconduct and bad processes. We don't need to know that. Let's just look forward.
But that's just a stupid answer, because if they were forward looking, then why would they not want to see what happened and look to the future? How can we prevent this from happening again?
And why would they not address the question, looking forward, why are you not banning GC Strategies and Dalian Cordex for 180 days while this investigation is ongoing? No mention of that answer at all. So she referenced the OAG, that's the Office of the Auditor General. The only reason why that review is going on is because Conservatives asked for it, and you voted against it. So I don't want to hear, oh, there's multiple reviews in place. There wouldn't have been unless the Conservatives did something.
Lucy, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Minister, I'm sure you have seen the economic report out today. The economy shrunk by 1.1% in the third quarter. Our deficit is currently at $40.1 billion. Debt servicing is now at $46.5 billion, which is more than we spend on health, as pointed out by my leader. Minister, I said this to your predecessor when she came to committee previously. Fundamentally, inflation comes down to the Treasury Board, because these rates are so high, this inflation so high is a result of government spending. All of the money from the government, Minister, goes through you. You are the one who signs the checks for the release of these funds. So given... And you will note, Minister, that she is no longer in your chair, that you are there now. So I'm asking you, do you take personal responsibility for this terrible situation that we're in now with these record high inflation rates, record high interest rates, which we are now starting to see permeate throughout the economy? For example, with the TD announcement yesterday and the loss of thousands of jobs. And this is only the beginning of it, Minister. What is your response for the spending record of your government as President of the Treasury Board?
The Government of Canada is actually on a strong fiscal track, contrary to the implication in your question. We have a AAA credit rating, which is an objective evaluation of our fiscal situation. We have the lowest debt to GDP ratio.
Minister,
in
you
the
say
G7,
lowest debt to GDP,
and
but it's disingenuous
the
when the
G7.
nominal states otherwise. $80,000 per U.S. citizen, only $50,000 here in Canada. So I think it's very disingenuous to say that. I'll lay out the facts. For the $15 billion that you promised you would find by October 2nd, but didn't even make any announcement, report in doing so, and only $500 million, a paltry $500 million this year, which, by the way, is only 2.03% of the additional $24.6 billion of the new spending. Since the 2023 budget, the $500 million of savings are only 2.31% of the record high proposed authorities, professional and special services, which sits at $21.6 billion. And the $15.4 billion of cuts over the next 5 years is only 11.69% of the deficits from this fiscal year throughout the next 5 years, Minister. So with that, I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Larry Brock.
Minister, GC Strategies, a two-person consulting firm operating out of their basement, producing no product or IT services, received $44 million in 2 years. Of that, $11 million went to ArriveCan alone. GC Strategies under criminal investigation for theft, fraud, and forgery for the last 10 months has still been awarded contracts by CBSA, notwithstanding their suspension of contracting services to GC Strategies. Why has not the Treasury Department, your department, banned GC Strategies from all contracting from all government departments?
That was quite the segue.
I'll say, I don't know if Stephanie was just super upset, but she was tripping up a lot. And I know when I get emotional, I can barely talk. So I'm wondering if that was the case.
It's possible. It's very, very possible, because the minister was, like all of them before, wasn't answering the questions really at all, and then tried to trot out this talking point that Freeland always says, oh, we have a AAA credit rating and we have the best. Listen, Canadians don't care about a AAA credit rating when they can't pay for their house. We had a comment today that we had to respond to, and it was from a couple, and they said that they managed to get into a apartment to rent, but they don't know how long they're going to be staying there, because they don't know how long they're going to be able to afford it. They have a tent, and they may have to join a tent city, but it's too cold.
And stuff like that just breaks my heart. Whenever I see comments like that, I do take a screenshot and I am saving them up. I think I'll probably email them to Pierre, but they're becoming more and more common, because it's becoming more and more common in this country. Canada didn't used to be like this. 8 years ago under Stephen Harper, Canada was not like this.
And another comment that we had today that we responded to, a gentleman, God, he must feel terrible, because his birthday's coming up, and he said, all I wanted to do was go out for breakfast, but we can't afford it. What does that say, that Canadians can't afford to go out for breakfast? It's not a steak dinner. You're not going to the keg. It's breakfast, for goodness sake. And you can't afford it. She can't afford to take her husband out on his birthday. This is the reality. And the Liberals keep talking about a AAA credit rating and a debt to GDP ratio, like that needs to justify all of the misery in Canada. Well, it's okay, Canadians. We don't care that you're miserable because we have our AAA credit rating. It is the most out of touch and insensitive talking point they can possibly trot out. Now, let's see if Anita finally responds to this question. Are you going to ban GC Strategies or not?
It's actually misleading to say that we are not finding the $15 billion over 5 years.
Please answer my question, please. Minister Anand, I asked you a question. You're responding to my colleague Stephanie Kuzi's question.
Because I didn't have a chance to respond.
And I would like a response to my question. I have literally less than 1 minute. So please, out of respect, can you please answer my question?
The role of the Treasury Board is, as I mentioned, to ensure that the practices, procedures, and guidelines are in place for public servants and their managers to follow. That is why I implemented and released the guidelines on procurement strategies.
Question is, why have you not banned GC strategies across the board? $11 million of taxpayer funds for doing nothing under criminal investigation. What does it take, Minister, for you to respect the taxpayer dollar?
Oh, I love
Good
Brock.
question.
Damn right. Damn right. And if you're like us, you're just cheering, because that's the question that Canadians want to know the answer to. What does it take?
I would like to reiterate that my role as Treasury Board President is to ensure that the policies and the practices and the procedures are in place from a governance perspective to make sure that there are responsible procurement practices in place in the public service. Within just 4.5 months since being appointed, I have taken some steps to ensure that this is the case by issuing the guidelines for procurement.
That is our time,
of
Minister.
third parties, as well as
Perhaps,
undertaking
one
a
of your
spending
colleagues
review.
can.
Thank you.
You know, the funny thing is she's actually shot herself in the foot, because she said, well, my role is to ensure that procurement practices are followed. Right. And my role is to make sure that people are conducting responsible procurement practices. Right. So, Minister Anand, is it or is it not irresponsible to allow PSPC and all the agencies to continue to do business with companies that are currently under criminal investigation by the RCMP? That's the question I would like to know the answer to. And the problem is, we're never going to get it, because like all of the other ministers, it's, oh, well, that's not me. Well, then who is it?
Well, this is the problem I've noticed with the Liberals. And I don't mean just in government, kind of in general, between people who are leaning on the left and people who are leaning on the right. People on the left don't really like taking responsibility for things. If you appoint them to a very high position like Anita Anand, you are responsible for a lot of stuff. That's why they're paying you the big bucks. But when something goes wrong, it's, oh, that's not my problem. When it's a conservative, usually it's, yes, this was the problem. This was the error. We identified it. Here's how we're going to stop it in the future. Here's how we're fixing it now.
Yeah, and I'll provide an update later. And if they don't do that, we're going to be right there to call it out. So this is the thing. You have these Liberals that when everything goes wrong, they run for the hills and say, that's not my problem. But if something goes right, they're right there for a photo op saying, I did that. Like, it is just unreal. But this is what we have. This is what we've gotten to know, folks, over the last 8 years. The problem is the Liberals, they're running out of space to hide. Nobody can answer a question.
And time's up. Canadians see it.
And this is why the Liberals have dropped to be tied with the NDP in terms of support.
They're almost half of what the Conservatives are.
Yeah. Now it's a race to get to the bottom between the NDP and the Liberal government. And I don't know who's going to reach there first, but it's going to be a hard landing.